Hey everyone, welcome back to Helping Make Sense. Wanted to discuss the FIRE movement today, which is a phenomenon that has been trending fairly recently on social media that promises financial freedom at a much younger age than is traditional. But the question that's kind of begged with this movement is it practical? Is it sustainable? And for how long? So let's just start off by explaining what FIRE is. FIRE is an acronym that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The idea is pretty straightforward. People who buy into this movement will save and invest in a hyper-aggressive fashion. You probably heard the standard rate of saving maybe 10 or 15% in your working career. People who take part in the FIRE movement will save upwards potentially of 50, 60, or even 70% or more. And the goal in doing this is to be able to live off of the savings and investments that you have earned over those shorter years so that you have the option to stop working at a much earlier age than traditional retirement. So let's talk a little bit about the basic math of the FIRE movement, which I've spoken about in another video, but it's worth reviewing, and this is the 4% rule. The 4% rule is a pretty widely accepted standard whereby the amount of assets and capital you have to your name, if you can live off of 4% of that, you should be good for the rest of your life. So in this example here, if you have $1 million in investments, if you can keep your expenses at $40,000 or 4% or below, that will generate for you $40,000 to live on each year. Again, obviously, it may be more, it may be less. 4% is kind of a baseline whereby as long as you're not going way above it, you should be able to live off of that. And if you're able to do so, those investments should last you 30 years or more. So the FIRE movement would suggest that if you can get to $1 million, $2 million, or whatever it is that you can live off of 4% of that, the quicker that you can get to that milestone, you've potentially obtained financial freedom for yourself, even if it's at a very young age. So let's take a look at two individuals who are the same age and make the same income. In this image, you have Jordan, who saves 10% of his income, and Alex, who saves 50% of his income. Now, in this scenario, both of these individuals make $80,000 a year, are age 25, and invest for 20 years. For example purposes, we're going to be a little conservative on the rate of return, which we'll consider to be 7% for both. After 20 years, notice how vastly different the total balances are. Jordan has $330,000, which, by the way, is pretty respectable given that he's saving 10% of his income. $330,000 is nothing to balk at. However, Alex, who again is saving 50% of his income, gets up to around $1.6 million after 20 years of investing due to his hyper accumulation. Now, I do want to say, because I'm sure you're looking at this examples and thinking to yourself, who can afford to live on $40,000 a year? And that's before even accounting for taxes and whatnot. I hear you. Just know that this is a fairly extreme example of the application of the FIRE movement. The degree to which you or anybody would take this philosophy is totally determined on your situation. This is just painting the picture that when done in a hyper-aggressive state, financial freedom might be closer than you may think. And by the way, as far as the numbers that were calculated in that example, I highly encourage you all to take the numbers that you have in your life, whether it's savings rate, income, investment return, things you know, plug them into an investment calculator. You can just Google them and try to see how time can help compound your dollars over whatever time horizon you choose, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 30, 40, or 50 years. So that's a quick breakdown of the FIRE movement, a quick little case study to kind of show how extreme the example can be and how quickly people can get to a 7-figure mark or even become multimillionaires when applying FIRE philosophies. I should say too, we're not necessarily considering the different types of accounts, the tax advantage and whatnot. This is really speaking to savings rate, which is just what percentage of the dollars that come to you are you saving for the future. So let's jump into some of the pros and cons here of the FIRE movement, some of which are pretty straightforward, but I wanted to kind of itemize them here for you. Of course, the leading advantage to this movement is getting to a status of financial freedom sooner. In so doing, your financial stress will become less. You probably will not have to worry about money, especially once you hit this threshold. You're also very intentional with your spending. Since you want every dollar to go towards your future in the FIRE movement, you're probably going to be very, very tight with spending in your high savings rate years. And while none of us know how long we're going to live, if you get to this threshold of financial freedom to where you can apply the 4% rule sooner, perhaps in your 50s or even 40s, you have so much more time to enjoy the 4% or whatever benchmark you want to use to withdraw from your savings for the rest of your life. Now let's jump over to the cons of the FIRE movement. Of course, this extreme level of saving can feel very restrictive to where you're not going out to eat, you're probably not traveling, you're probably not going to events with your friends. The burnout effect can be very real. If you're trying to take on additional shifts at work or side hustles to accelerate the rate at which you get to your number, you're probably going to burn out a little bit quicker. There's also the risk of the market being down when you want to pull your money. Again, this goes back to what investments you're putting your money into. But if you're investing in single stocks or more volatile investments, and when you're passing your threshold, if the market is down, you don't want to take out a loss. So you may have to delay your retirement date if that's the case. And then a couple more here. Healthcare and inflation uncertainty. So about half of the people in the US have their health insurance through their employer. Unless you qualify for Medicare or Medicaid for another reason, you're going to have to get health insurance on your own, which is an added cost that your employers cover a good amount of if you're actively working. So the expenses that you might not foresee can come out of nowhere and even rise once you surpass your number. Inflation, of course, is always a factor, especially nowadays. The value of the dollar goes down as there are more dollars in the economy. Not too much we would do about that, whether you're applying the FIRE movement or not, but it's worth mentioning. And this one's an interesting one to wrap up here on identity issues. So when you stop working, especially if you're in your 40s and you have a nice big nest egg, maybe you have a family, you have good reasons to shift your priorities to attending your kids' events or spending time with family or maybe your parents. But work gives a lot of people a sense of purpose. And if they don't have that, especially when their cohorts do, right, their other friends and neighbors are going to work every day and they don't have that, they might have a void in their life that needs to be filled. If your sole goal is to accrue this amount so that you can say, I don't want to report to anybody, I don't want to work, I just want to sit around all day, it may not be as advantageous as you think. So as far as my thoughts on the FIRE movement, I think that it is something that should be acknowledged, but not done to the degree to which a lot of the viral sensations take it to. We're in a society now where most people don't save nearly enough, and this approach or philosophy is kind of the antithesis to that. When you have two extremes, the healthy balance for most people would probably lie somewhere in the middle. So should you be saving 10, 15%, maybe more if you can, to maybe get to financial freedom and retirement a little earlier than 65, 70, or even later? Definitely. But should you not have any life or friends or network or travel in your prime years, right, your 30s and 40s, I'd probably say no to that as well. So I think there's a healthy medium here where taking the FIRE movement to the extreme and saving 50% of your income or more, probably not the wisest thing to have a healthy lifestyle and relationships. But it should be something that you're conscious of, and you should know your numbers so that you can anticipate the year you could retire given your savings rate, given how your investments are compounding for you, and then make decisions using that information. So let me know what you think about the FIRE movement. Keep in mind, having an abundance of money just enables you to do more things, right? It gives you more options. The FIRE movement is creating options at a more rapid pace, but by doing so, you're effectively eliminating your options in the present. For some, it might work. For some, it may not. Really depends on the person, really depends on the timeline and the savings rate and even their income, right? if you're saving 50% of 200,000, you're of course going to be a lot more comfortable than someone saving 50% of 70,000. So definitely know your numbers. Let me know your thoughts and questions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.